What comes to mind when you think about being born at home? In today's episode, we're diving into the beautiful, intimate world of birth through the lens of Born at Home, a powerful documentary that explores the meaning, challenges, and magic of bringing life into the world at home. If you love birth stories, you won't want to miss this. Hi, I'm Deborah Pascali-Bonaro, founder and director of Orgasmic Birth and host of the Orgasmic Birth podcast. Joining me today is Amanda Banks, an amazing documentary filmmaker, producer of Born at Home, a mother of two children born at home. She is a health professional based in Brisbane, Australia, and has a passion for advocacy and education. And welcome, Amanda. I have to tell you, I've been so looking forward to talking with you. After watching your absolutely incredible documentary, I was like, okay, we
Wow.
have to have a chat about your own birth and what inspired
Mm,
you and to share with listeners about your film. So thank you for joining me today.
Thank you. It's such a pleasure. You've been on my list like to chat to the whole time, obviously because you know Sarah as well, Dr. Sarah Buckley, and we had such a lovely chat about you when we were filming a couple of years ago now. So it's such a privilege and a pleasure to be chatting with you today.
Oh, thank you. And I know you're up early to join us as we're on the opposite sides of the world here. I'm in New Jersey, but I'd love
Mhm,
to start with, you said in your bio, right, that you have two children born at home.
mhm,
Can you share what started you on that journey? How did you even think about a home birth and what were they like for you?
It's actually quite a funny story because my background is health science, so I've always been interested in the body and like had a deep trust in physiology. And if we just let the body do the thing, then it just does the thing. So I had an unexpected pregnancy with my little dude back in 2016, and he was subsequently born in 2017. And it turns out sex can lead to pregnancy at times. So I had a real life
Yes.
experience of that. It was so funny. I thought there's no way I can fall pregnant when I'm on my period. And it was like day 5 or day 6, and here we are, almost 8 years later. So, uh, yeah, that was an interesting start to my journey. I hadn't been considering pregnancy or really children at that time, so I was really thrust in the world of parenthood quite suddenly. It was a really difficult pregnancy with him. We had like a threatened miscarriage, but he held on, and he's such a vivacious little dude now. So, leading into that pregnancy, I had HD. And I think because it was so difficult, I really wanted the care of a private midwife. And I was really fortunate enough to have a friend who had had a home birth. She was the only person that I knew. And I remember her speaking really fondly of the relationship that they had. And because it was an unexpected pregnancy, I felt like I needed extra care just to help me just support, that transition to motherhood. So I called her as the first person that I spoke to. And within 15 minutes, I knew that she was a midwife for me. We just got on so well. And she was everything that I kind of needed, like the comfort, the wisdom, the knowledge, the confidence. Um, so I knew. And then I met her and it was just confirmed. And we started on our private midwifery journey. So she followed me all the way through, and I went into labor with him at 41 weeks and 5 days. So I was convinced that I would never birth this baby. I had that day where, like, there's no way. It's just never going to happen. He's going to be a toddler inside me, and this is how, you know, he's going to develop. And it was that night that I started to lose my mucus plug, and then labor started for me quite intense. It wasn't like a gradual build up. I'm an all or nothing kind of person, hence why the film kind of came about as well. So it was like labor, 11 o'clock, not being able to walk. I was just kind of laying on the couch and rotating between the couch and the bed. And that kind of went on for about 17 hours with him. So I'd say as a first birth, that's quite good. Um, we had a few complications in the early postpartum period. So I was kind of rotating between the toilet and the bed and then the pool. Um, but things felt kind of slow. But I remember like doing a self vaginal examination just to feel, I just needed some reassurance. And I remember just the feeling his head, and he was like, you know, a finger, a finger. And I just couldn't believe it. And I was just ecstatic. And then a few hours later, I noticed that he had kind of moved down like an extra, do you do inches over there? An extra inch coming to my finger. Um, so it was really nice to have that feedback that things
I
were
love
progressing, even though
that.
they felt a bit slow. Yeah, because I didn't
And
want any external VEs. So yeah,
and
it felt
it,
natural to do that.
it's so special that you did that because I just want to point out, right? Like, so everybody's conditioned to have absolute strangers put their hand in your
Mm,
vagina and feel your baby in your cervix. And how nice is it when we say, feel for yourself, even if you don't
mm,
know the numbers or the what a midwife knows, you know your body
hmm.
and your baby. So I can just
Yeah,
feel the ecstatic as you say it when you could feel the
yeah,
difference and the movement.
yeah. I think, and it was cool to feel the hair because I didn't expect that. I had no plans to do this. It just kind of intuitively happened when I was in the pool. And I just remember having this feeling like, well, I can do that. So yeah, it was very exciting. And I think it just gave me that extra boost of, and his birth, I think was quite pleasurable as well, which is interesting. I didn't expect that. It's kind of, and particularly towards the end, yeah, I really enjoyed it. I really enjoyed that birth, and particularly the second as well. And so after the check, we kind of ended up doing some maneuvers in the bathroom because I felt that, I don't know, I felt at the time there was some kind of block, but not a severe one. But and then my midwife thought it was a positional thing. And before I gave birth to him, I was quite seriously climbing. So I'm a rock climber, so I was very, very tight and very strong, very, very strong, like leading into before that birth. So I think my pelvic floor was quite very toned, and it felt like it kind of needed to open and soften a little bit more. So I wasn't sure if it was that or his position. So we did some positional rotations. Um, and then we ended up shifting to the bed, which hadn't imagined a land birth either. So that was pretty cool. And so I ended up being on all fours with my head down, like bum up kind of thing. And then when I'd have a surge, I'd sit up and be kind of legs open, really wide. And then I felt him start to draw down, which is just the best feeling ever. And he started to crown, which was amazing. It was really slow and that really intensity. I enjoyed that intensity of him coming through. And then his little head came out, and then it was really interesting because things just stopped. So the surges came through, and his head was out, but he just wouldn't come through further. So the midwife checked for shoulder dystocia, and there was no shoulder. And then she had a little feel, thought maybe the cord's around his neck. So she kind of tried to flick the cord around his neck, but she noticed there was two wraps, and it was really tight. So she wasn't able to kind of flick it over. Um, so we tried a few more surges, and then it was very clear that the cord was it was too tangled. It was too tight for him to kind of progress. So we made the decision to cut the cord um, while he was half in, half out. So they kind of double clamped the side and then snipped the middle. And obviously, that's not in my birth plan that I wanted delayed cord clamping. But I think the trust in my midwife was so deep that I wasn't stressed at all about the kind of deviation because I knew that I was just so confident in her clinical skills as well as our communication was really good. So then we kind of they flipped me over and they're like, okay, let's go. Like, we're going to get the baby. So then the next surge, he came just sliding straight out. So the cord, he was really tangled in the cord. This guy, he had it twice around his neck, once around his stomach, and then around his foot as well. So he's a very active
Wow.
guy. Yeah. And it was quite long. So he had obviously been doing a lot of somersaults inside um, throughout the pregnancy. So he was born, but the little guy wasn't breathing. So we did some CPR on him. So my friend was there as well as my two midwives and my partner at the time. And my midwife was like, okay, you go get the chopping board from the kitchen, like you over here. So everyone was like directed a position. And so then he was placed on the chopping board on my bed, and we gave him some CPR. So originally I was stroking him and talking to him to see if he'd wake up, but unfortunately that didn't happen. And then he was given oxygen and CPR, and then we called the ambulance. My friend did, to just kind of get some extra help if we needed it. But it turns out it's a really interesting progression of events. He had this condition called esophageal atresia, which means that when he was developing, his esophagus didn't join his stomach. So when he was trying to take a breath for the first time, there was too much aspirations, like liquid, in his lungs. So he required surgery when he was 7 days old, and like an extended kind of NICU stay. But it's unrelated to the birth. But I'm just so grateful. I'm so grateful that we had him at home, because I know that scenario would have been really different if we were in a hospital situation. I feel that I would have had a cesarean. I would have had to have been in NICU with him while also healing myself, and the trauma associated with that. So, and I had my own private midwife, so she followed us through the hospital transfer, and she was there in NICU with us as well, and a constant, person for support during that whole period as well. So, yeah, it's a really interesting journey how I kind of came into motherhood. Um, but yeah, so grateful at the same time of all the things, all the lessons that came throughout that whole experience.
Yeah.
Mm.
And like birth, right? We never know. It's different than what we think. There are different
Hmm.
lessons in it. But I love coming back to your beginning, that you found that caregiver, your midwife and you. I mean, to right away,
Mm.
have 15
Hmm.
minutes and just know this is the person that has the wisdom you're looking for, but also is
Yeah.
honoring that you have wisdom in
Hmm.
your body and your baby, and that beautiful collaboration. So,
Yeah,
a- you went through a lot. So after your
I did.
son's birth, how long was it? And was this a intended pregnancy the second time? What brought you to another
Mm.
baby?
I think it took me a little bit of time to process all the things that happened with him, because he had a lot of subsequent surgeries as well due to his abnormality. So I kind of took the time to just be there for him. And through that journey, I really became passionate about advocacy, because I had to do it firsthand for him. So I started to kind of get more interested in, yeah, in general advocacy, and probably more specifically in the maternity sector. So I kind of, there was a couple of years in between. And then around, I think he was about 18 months, um, I fell pregnant again, but ended up having two miscarriages between the two children. Um, but I think it was a timing thing, and I was really focused on having a healthy baby, because of the stress. For anyone that's had a baby that hasn't been well, it's a lot. It's a lot to process. So my goal was just to be as healthy as I can, and have the time with him and just be really ready. So the miscarriages were hard, but now in hindsight, it's just the way that life was meant to unfold for me. Um, so I fell pregnant with Bridget. I think there's 3 years difference between them, so it was about 2 years between the when Harvey was born and the third pregnancy, fourth pregnancy. So I just my kids are my daughter's cruising around on a little four-wheeler, so you may see her jump in. She's coming in with her little bluey
That's
jammies.
fine. And I,
We're just talking about
oh,
your birth, Bridgie. This is
yes.
Deborah.
Hello.
She can't hear you, but you can smile. Um, so her birth was just, and her pregnancy was so easy. She Even the pregnancy was much easier. This is my dude. Okay, I need to record now. Okay. Um, so yeah, fell pregnant with her quite easily, and just overall the pregnancy was much much easier. So She was born, I went into labor at 41 and 3. Oh, they're going in the pool. It's so good having a pool in Australia. We're just swimming all day, all day.
That's
Get in now.
fantastic because I know your
Mm,
weather's super hot. We're
it's
very
really,
cold, so it's nice to see you in the heat. And I do want
yeah.
to just say, really, I'm so sorry for your losses because,
Mm,
you know, miscarriage, loss is so hard, right? And you went through
mm,
not loss with your first son, but loss of what you
yeah.
expected. It was still
Hmm.
very challenging. So
Yeah.
just honoring how much you've gone through and that
Mm,
where that's brought you to too. So please continue on
thank
Bridget's
you.
pregnancy and
Thank you. It's the lessons that you learn along the way too. I think those experiences were really difficult, but it also helped me connect. And the things that I learned during that also when making the film was a whole different perspective as well. It's interesting how life takes you on journeys and where you end up, which is hard to know what that looks like when you're in the difficult times.
yes,
Mm, mm. So
for
Bridget, so
sure.
41 and 3, also convinced that I'd never be pregnant, I'd never give birth again. But I felt pretty good with her. I just had more energy and was just a bit happier as well. I'd processed a lot of the trauma, so I was ready for her to come. And I had a feeling that she might be a girl, but I wasn't sure. And it was kind of this excitement of because I had a boy, and obviously it would be fine if I had another boy. But I just felt like she was a girl, so I just couldn't wait to meet her. And 41 and 3, and I just assumed that I would go into labor at nighttime because he was nighttime and I'm always active at nighttime. The whole film was pretty much created at night. It's my time to shine. So I didn't expect or think that I was in labor when it was, 3 o'clock in the afternoon. And I had a nap that day. So I was feeling rested and I'd eaten all the food and I was ready, for just another night of sleeping and then maybe tomorrow. And then I started to get this period pain and I was really uncertain of what it was. I was not convinced it was labor. There was no way it was labor because it was too easy and it wasn't painful. So at the time we had a puzzle. I really like puzzling. I love a good puzzle. And so we had this really difficult puzzle laid out on the kitchen table. And I was just kind of puzzling. And then every 5 minutes or so, I just find myself leaning over the bench, just breathing. And then I just puzzle again. And it's like I was observing myself from the outside and not, realizing what was actually happening, that these surges were 5 minutes apart. Um, so that happened for maybe an hour or so. And then kind of came around to dinner time. And my dude at the time is allergic to sleep. So we had to put him to sleep. So things kind of slowed down a little bit. And then as soon as he was asleep at 7, is like instant, instant labor. So that whole time, so that the few hours, I was laboring without knowing. But as soon as I knew that he was asleep, and we share a wall. So first night he ever slept in his own room, we'd always co-slept. And so we're sharing a wall. And then the moment I just went to bed, laid down, and then the surges started coming. But they weren't really difficult. I just found them so enjoyable and they felt really productive. And I remember texting my midwife and just saying, how do I know when to fill up the pool? And she's like, you'll know, it's fine. And I'm like, okay, I might just go for a shower. And so I kind of fluctuated between going to the shower and sitting on the toilet because I thought I needed to poo. And
Oh
I was like,
no.
I'm like, why can't I? Why is it not working? I didn't connect that it was a head. That was There was a head in my pelvis. And so I was just completely like in the flow of the labor without just feeling very naive, I guess, in hindsight. So I just kept trying to go to the toilet and nothing kept happening. And then I just kind of jump in the shower and then sit on the toilet again. And then in that time, the pool had been filled up. And then I jumped in the pool. And that's the last kind of I heard. I had, was able to contact my midwife again because I was in the throes of labor and still not convinced that I was going to give birth soon. I thought I'd have another 10 hours or something. And then my partner at the time came in And he's like, oh, my midwife is asking if you're feeling any pressure. And I was in between a surge, so I felt great. And I said, no, I don't think so. I feel fine. And then a huge surge came. And then I remember saying, yes, yes, I can feel pressure. And so apparently she just said, I'll be there in 15 minutes. And then the 15 minutes came and she's like an angel. She just walked through the door and I just saw her face because we had this trusting relationship. She had been there through the birth, through the difficult times, through the two miscarriages, and then through this pregnancy. And to see her, I just felt so safe and so supported. And I said, you know, baby, baby. And she's like, yes. And then like about 15 minutes later, um, Bridget was crowning. So I feel like it happened really quickly. And as soon as so beautiful, as soon as she was crowning, I loved this part. She came through so slowly. Her head was just kind of like came down to here in one surge and just sat there for a surge. And then like over her nose and then sat here for a whole surge and then over her mouth. I still think it's
Aw.
funny that my perineum was like over her mouth. And then the next one, she just came down to her chin, and then her head was just out. It was so beautiful. And then the next surge came through, and her whole body just slipped out. And I just picked her up out of the water, and I just sat back and pulled her straight to my chest. And I remember just crying, just saying, "My baby, my baby." And she was born, and no one touched us. There was no interference. There was no CPR. There was just time. And my midwife was really hands off because apparently she was a little bit slower to come to. And she kind of started to consider, suggesting a little bit of external stimulation. But knowing my history, she kind of was very closely observing me and just letting us have the time. And then she just started crying and and became animated. And we just sat there for I don't know how long in this beautiful glow bubble, just crying. And she was just such a beautiful, beautiful, perfect little baby. And then it's funny, someone said, "It's a boy." And then my midwife and myself we looked at each other and just started laughing. And then my midwife said, "Are you sure?" And then we checked, and then she was actually a girl. Because like through the water, sometimes the umbilical
Right.
cord can look like a penis. I was like,
Yes.
"She's a girl," and then she
Aw.
was a beautiful little girl. It
What
was
a
so
beautiful
perfect.
story. And
It was
and
so
to
beautiful.
And to know that you were thinking you weren't in labor, I love that,
Yeah.
right? We see that so often with people because if we don't pay
Mm,
attention to it too soon, a lot of that, right? We can live our
hmm.
life and work it in. So that was so beautiful.
Yeah.
And it
So
sounds
easy. It was too
healing.
easy to be labor, I think. Yeah. Actually, there was one moment as well, which I'll never forget, because I did a lot of affirmation work with her with that pregnancy, because obviously I was really worried about having a healthy baby and what that would look like. But I didn't want any extra scans like later on. So it was a very strong experience of trust that I had to really surrender to, that things are going to be okay, and it's a different baby and it's a different pregnancy, and she's healthy. And I remember just before I started um, crowning, I felt this block. It's like my body was kind of got scared because I felt like things were progressing. And I remember just out loud saying, like, it's unplanned, my baby's healthy and safe. And it just came out of my mouth. It was like this, what I needed to hear and experience, to let go and allow her to pass through. And yeah, it's just such a special moment for me of that trust coming through, and then her coming out. It's nice when you do the work and it just happens um
Yes.
in the moment.
So
Mm,
beautiful, Amanda. Thank you so much for sharing, each of your children's birth and your losses in between. All of it
mm,
is so important. And as you
yeah.
said, all these things kind of gave you lessons, which I have to ask, where did you first decide that you were going to make a documentary film about being born at home? Where did that come from?
Yeah, so Bridget's birth changed me. 100%. So I am a different person than I was before I birthed her. And that's where it started because even though Harvey was a home birth and I was really well supported, there was an interruption in the hormonal flow because it had to be because it was survival. And so the transition in my personality, in terms of my confidence and my um, creativity, is just so different. So when she was born, I just wanted to tell everyone what birth could be like because I felt so good in my body and my recovery was so easy and my mental health was so good. And I just felt like I could do anything. And that feeling continued for months. And it probably is still there from her birth, which is almost 5 years ago. And I was so passionate about sharing that with other people. Imagine if more women felt like that after their birth, how the world would be different. Um, so that was one layer. And then I got very passionate with advocacy because it had been brewing since Harvey's birth. And I got involved in Home Birth Queensland, who is a non for profit org in Queensland. And we ran groups, get togethers, meetups, education, promotion, and advocacy. So it's kind of, it's a non for profit org specifically for home birth. So I got involved with them very randomly, unplanned. My friend roped me into a position that I had no idea what it was, and it turned out to be basically the president of the organization. So that happened when she was 6 months old. So I was attending all of these. This is my life. It just happens. Um, so I was attending all of these circles with these beautiful families sharing their home birth stories and also a lot of trauma stories. So a lot of women, you know, hopefully I can say in Australia, choose to birth at home because they've had traumatic experiences in the hospital. So I started to hear a lot more trauma stories and then through on the triumph stories of how healing the home births can be for them. So the more stories I heard of trauma, the more angry I became. And when I have a lot of feelings, I'm very call to action. I like to take action. And so there were so many that I got angry and I wanted to do something. And I felt that the level that I was kind of working at the time, which was very grassroots, small community, which is really important, but I wanted to go bigger. I wanted more people to see and hear. And because we had like your film and we have birth time and also the business of being born, I knew how impactful those films were, and they were hugely influential along my journey as well, and a lot of other people's journeys. So at the time, I thought, well, why not? Why not just make a short film, um, and we'll just do our local community, and it'll just be small, maybe like 10 minutes, and we'll just have it on the Home Birth Queensland website, or we'll just use it as a really small resource, just so people know what home birth is, because lots of people don't know it's even an option in Australia. It's very small. And I think if people actually knew what the difference is, then they could make an informed decision about their care. So it started off like that. And I called my best friend, Eleanor, who is a videographer. So at the time, she does real estate videography. That's her job. And before she was doing, little bits and pieces. And we've done a random project together years and years ago. So I called her and just I think I said, Eleanor, would you like to do a film with me? And she just said yes. She didn't know what it was. It was just we just work really well together. And we have a similar energy. So we're both like very driven and focused. And so she'd always wanted to do a film, and she had a cesarean at that time. And she didn't know anything about home birth other than what I'd shared with her. So she really was quite a blank slate. So we just started, and then I created like a framework of what I wanted to include. And then the film took its own journey from the beginning. It just grew and grew and grew. And then it ended up being a 45-minute film. And we watched it, and it was so good. It was so good. And we didn't know. We had no idea. It was so beautiful. And so we showed a friend who was a producer, and he asked us to make it a little bit longer. So then we ended up making it to an hour. And we got a little bit of feedback, and we did a little bit of editing, but nothing major. And then the film is what it is today. It was a completely unplanned um, unplanned
I love it.
creation.
Right. Well, that's
Yeah.
creative energy, right? Like birth
Yeah.
is creative energy, and we
Mm-hmm.
birth forward many other things when we're in that creative flow. For
Mm.
everyone that's listening, if could you give like what would be your short description about the film for someone who's like, what is it about?
Mm. Well, the film, we tried to keep it mostly, it's all evidence based. So it tells you what it's like to birth at home. But not only that, we talk a lot about the physiology and the hormonal flow and how the environment impacts physiology, because it doesn't, we're not anti or pro anything. We're all about information so everyone can make an informed decision. So that was a huge theme across the film, was informed decision making. So we dive into physiology, hormonal flow, what it's like to birth at home, the safety, because safety is always, the main concern of people when they're looking at the location of birth. So we look at the stats, we look at cesarean rates. We talk about birth trauma as well, because you can't talk about birthing at home without birth trauma, because a lot of people come from that journey as well, and it was really important for us to include it. And we talk about what home birth brings to the family. What are the benefits of birthing at home? Why do we do it? And we talk about things to do with connecting families, and how you're breaking kind of generational cycles by choosing to do things differently. Um, yeah, I feel like I wanted to create a resource in such that someone could watch it, and then they would have enough information to either research more themselves along that path, or feel that hospital birth or planned cesarean is still the right thing for them. So we wanted it to be a resource, an educational resource, but also entertaining at the same time.
And you
That's a
did
bit
it.
of a mixed up description.
No, but it's a wonderful description because I would say that. I mean, I thoroughly enjoyed it. So you're entertained,
Mm,
it's beautiful, there's so many messages, but incredibly educational. And I love that
mm,
your end, which is so much like mine too, is that
mhm.
everybody has the information to make their own best choice. And
Yes.
I think your film really fits that because so many people don't even look at home birth. They just kind of
Mm,
cross it off as like not for me. And I
mhm,
would encourage everyone who's listening to really see your film so that then you can decide for yourself, as
mm,
you address so many of these issues, including safety. So,
mhm.
can you let people know where can they see your film? How can people watch,
So really
especially in
excited.
the US?
Yes, yes. So we are very excited. We are finally able to stream online, and we are about to release in the US. Yeah, I know. I'm so happy, and it's been a crazy journey, because we originally just planned to go online streaming. We had no idea that people would want to see it. But then we ended up getting a film contract to go to cinemas, and we ended up going to cinemas almost all over the world, which was amazing, because I just love bringing the community together, because we didn't make this film for it to be a business. It was always about community, bringing people together, connecting like-minded families, providing information. So yeah, we're so excited to be streaming, so more people have access. So through our website, which is bornathomefilm.com, we have like a link that goes directly to the online streaming platform, and you can watch it. I think over 3 days, as many times as you like. In the US, we're about to launch. We're out of our contract now for the US, so by the time this airs, you should be good to go. That's the only country we had to hold off on just because of contractual um, obligations. But now we're free. We can't wait.
Yay! Oh,
Yay!
fantastic. It is so exciting. I have to say, Amanda, it's so wonderful to hear your journey and to
Mm.
hear how the film came about, too. Is there any last thing you'd like to say to people that might be planning a pregnancy or for those that are pregnant as they're preparing for birth? What would be a nugget of advice you'd like to leave them with?
I think there's probably two. The first thing is education. For me, that was the biggest thing, because education and intuition, because those two kind of feed into each other. When you have doubts, as we all do throughout our labor and pregnancy, you can kind of shift your mindset to the education and the research, And then, when you get out of the research, so you can shift your mind back into your body. So it's like this flow between the two, which is kind of, they're both really supportive, and they both kind of target both sides of the brain. So you can be in a really good headspace if you're educated and you're also connected with your body through the intuition.
Yeah. Great advice. So, one last time, tell us where, say your website again,
Mm-hmm.
any social, how can people follow you and get in touch?
Mm-hmm. So the best way to watch the film is through our website, which is bornathomefilm.com. And our socials are always really active. So our Instagram is at Born at Home Film. And there's a lot of research that we put through there, and little reels from the film and interviews as well. We've got a bunch of full length interviews on our YouTube, like interviews from the film. So Dr. Sarah Buckley's on there, and Dr. Rachel Reed, and the families as well. So hearing the backstories of the families. Oh, I still cry when I watch these interviews. So they're all live as well on the YouTube. The YouTube channel is really good. There's a lot of great content, especially if you're preparing to birth at home as well, because there's stories that you'll resonate with through the families that we chose that are in the film too. So that's the best way to find out the most information about us.
Fantastic. We'll put those all in the
Mm.
show notes. So wherever you're listening or watching to this interview, just look below and you'll have all Amanda's links. And I really do hope everyone watches Born at Home. And we'd love to hear from you. So definitely tag Born at Home Films, tag us. We'd love to hear your takeaways from our conversation today and also after watching the beautiful film. So thank you so much, Amanda, for joining us today.
Thank you. It's been such a pleasure. I'm so excited. It's so nice to connect.
I love it. And thank you to all our listeners. We so appreciate that you join us week after week, and we hope that you'll rate and review the show. That helps us reach more people. Share this with some friends that you know, and we hope you'll join us next week on the next episode of the Orgasmic Birth Podcast.